I'm Brennan O'Byrne from Norwood, Massachusetts. World War II veterans and widows of veterans, they understand, they've seen it. They've seen it from wartime to the end of life, and they understand exactly what happens to a person when they go to combat. They've gone through it themselves, or they watched their husbands or wives go through it, and then they watched Vietnam vets go through it, and now they're watching us go through it. I joined the National Guard in October of 2002 while I was still in high school, 17 years old, and I was a tank mechanic. And then I later transferred over to the regular Army as airborne infantry, and did a 15-month deployment to Afghanistan in the Korengal Valley with the 173rd Airborne Brigade. The experience in Afghanistan was, sometimes terrifying, sometimes boring, sometimes exhilarating, but most of all, it was a bonding experience between a group of men, and that was the thing I got out of it the most, was the guys that I served with. What Outward Bound will do for veterans on these trips that are coming from Afghanistan and Iraq will provide them a place away from society to bond again, to be understood by people that have been through the same thing. When I was in Afghanistan, I watched people literally die for each other. And I come back to a society that honks at me if I've taken too long to make a right-hand turn. The best memory from my Outward Bound course was the last trip. The last day we had to row 8 miles down the water. We had no wind, and it sucked the entire time, but it was great because you had people switching out, you had people caring for each other, and it came from a group that didn't know each other to being concerned about if they had enough water, if they had enough break time, and that's powerful. That's great stuff. And then when you get across and you get across that finish line, 4 hours later, 5 hours later, and you say, we did it. We worked as a team and we got here and no one's hurt, no one's dead, and the boat's still intact, even though, there's millions of obstacles out there. You feel good about yourself. You feel like you've accomplished something at the end of the day, and that's the best memory for me, was that we accomplished something as a team. Outward Bound provides a safe space for guys, men and women, to be understood again, to reconnect and be able to heal together rather than as individuals. After my Outward Bound trip to Maine, I felt really good about myself. It's one of the better feelings I've had in a long time. A place like Outward Bound is the place to heal.
My name's Sebastian Junger. I'm an author and a journalist. I've covered a lot of wars overseas, and I co-directed with my colleague Tim Hetherington a movie called Restrepo about a platoon in combat in Afghanistan. I think what's unique about Outward Bound is that it combines the physical challenges of working in a wilderness environment with a real sort of exploration of the emotional side of things. People are really encouraged to interact and share how they feel and talk openly about some very, very painful things that I think really wouldn't feel safe doing in another situation. The thing about combat is that you have a small group of people who are completely interreliant on each other in a very difficult environment. And once you get used to being in a small group like that, where you really can count on everyone else's help and support in the worst kind of circumstances, once you get used to that, it's actually very hard to give it up. And a lot of soldiers actually miss the war that they were in. Not that they miss war, but they miss being in a small group where they feel so safely protected by their brothers and sisters. And what Outward Bound is able to do is, in some ways, recreate that environment, except in a non-combat setting. It's in the wilderness, but still, it's a dangerous environment. And there is something about re-experiencing that closeness, that interreliance on others, that is very, very therapeutic. And it allows vets to then go back into their civilian lives with some measure of confidence and sort of a feeling of control that maybe they didn't have before when they just come back from overseas. So if you can donate money to Outward Bound and help 2,500 vets a year reintegrate themselves back into society, it's life-saving for the vets, but it's also life-saving for this country. I mean, the vets we have coming home, these are young people in their 20s. This is the future. These are the future leaders of our country. This is America. One of the great things about Outward Bound is that it takes vets and it puts them in some of the most rugged and beautiful parts of America, of that country that soldiers themselves understand that they're defending. Every vet, every returning soldier to this country should have the opportunity, if they want, to do a course like this, where they can not only share their experiences with other vets and return home a little bit reassured about who they are and their role in society, but also they get to enjoy this beautiful country that they've defended with their lives.
I'm John Whitehead, a big fan of Outward Bound. There are 500 veterans waiting to go on Outward Bound trips. And so the need for the money is urgent. With my own Navy experience, where I participated in 4 invasions, both in the Atlantic and in the Pacific, and was pretty actively involved in those invasions of landing troops on enemy soil. I, as with many other veterans of World War II, have an understanding of what it's like to go through war, how terrible it is, how it can affect your lives adversely as well as in a favorable way. And I think we can understand how a program like Outward Bound would be of benefit, would have been of benefit to us when we came out of World War II, and will indeed be a benefit for today's soldiers coming home from battle. Outward Bound currently is running about 100 of those trips each year, but they could do twice as many. And yet it takes a few $100s to support a single trip. And that's what they need now. And it's a shame because everything is there for these trips except a little bit more money to end. So anybody who's listening, I urge them to support a few dollars, as much as you can afford, to bring these soldiers on these very valuable experiences.